Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's episode of You Are the Guide. Today, I'm kind of excited to film this because I want to talk to you about three important little habits that I've created in the past years to help me regulate my nervous system. And I find this very, very important to talk about because the more that now all this information about mental health is out there, many people were self-diagnosing ourselves sometimes, which we shouldn't. We're being diagnosed with all these things out there. But at the end of the day, outside of, and I believe that having a diagnosis is very important because certain conditions have specific treatments that are very specific and needed. But sometimes at the core of many of mental health issues or PTSD, complex PTSD, even though it's more extreme, borderline personality disorder, depression, anxiety, we are unable to regulate ourselves when we're feeling overwhelmed. So these are the things that have really, really, really helped me. I don't have anything like majestic or like new that you've never heard of. But I just want to tell you why I've fallen in love with these three practices. And first, I want to start by saying, for me, my dysregulation happens consistently for me throughout the day, and it normally has to do with dealing with other people. So a lot of my complex trauma happened around environments with a lot of people. So dealing with people has always been a trigger. So to tell you a little bit about my story, now that I've arrived at knowing that what I'm dealing with is complex PTSD, it led me through a lot of other diagnoses. So that now I see as symptoms of my complex PTSD. But first, it was panic attacks. I started to experience panic attacks in high school with very severe, extreme anxiety and very intrusive thoughts that something was wrong. And a little bit of OCD, like obsessive compulsive thoughts, meaning if I stop, like I remember I've shared this story before. I had an episode where the anxiety was so much that I really believed that if I didn't look at one area of the wall in my house, something really bad was going to happen. And I had to receive support and help to get out of that because I could not stop looking at the wall because I thought something really bad was going to happen. It was also during the time that my hormones were peaking. So it's very interesting that I've seen for me, my hormones and my journey with that has really affected my mental health. Then after the panic and the anxiety, I started to experience the symptoms of PMDD, premenstrual dysphoric disorder. So it was pretty much all of the symptoms for me. Remember, this is not everybody's story. It's my personal journey, but all of the symptoms of complex PTSD would be more present the week before my cycle because my hormones were not there to support me to get through them. So I was experiencing everything with PMDD, which is very deep depression, hopelessness, anxiety, mood swings. It was more emotional than physical for me, but it was very difficult because I dealt for years. And I never knew what was wrong. I just felt that 2 weeks before my period, I feel so hopeless that I don't see a point of why I even be here. And then the day that I would start my period, it was like lifted and I was like, oh my God, everything's fine. Like, oh my God, that was too dramatic. And then it would cycle every single month. And if you were dealing with me at any point throughout that time, you know that it was true. So then that was very hard for me. I think that's when I hit some of my deepest hopelessness kind of moments. And then as I continued to receive support and work with professionals, I was diagnosed with ADHD because of the disassociation, and I was disassociated. It was very hard for me to be organized and complete things that I really wanted to do. And I noticed that for me, ADHD medication didn't work. It was more, I would feel so shut down at certain times and then so dysregulated. And then I would have this thing inside where I was always jittery. Like if I was sitting here with you, I would be doing this to my hands like consistently, like I couldn't stop. And I would try to hide it. Not many people know all of this about me. It's a lot of work to hide how your nervous system is overwhelmed. So that was that. And I think the biggest one is when for a long time I really believed that I did have borderline personality disorder, which tied a lot to and I was never diagnosed. So that's why I say don't diagnose yourself because you don't know what you have. But those questions and working with a specific clinic for people with borderline personality disorder and professionals around that very unique type of treatment is how I found out that I have complex PTSD and not borderline personality. But because a lot of my triggers are around relationships, a lot of my triggers, the dysregulation plus the relationship aspect of it, the abandonment aspect to it, the hopelessness because of the hormonal changes, like all of it really made it perceived as if it was BPD. But in some aspects of it, BPD treatment helps people with complex PTSD. So just know that. But that was a big one. Because of the BPD, I actually discovered a program that's called Integrate that was so helpful for me. And I hopefully will be talking a lot more about that. But it's this amazing researcher. Her name is Ashley. She's done a lot of research with patients with BPD and was able to recognize at the core guidance to kind of work through it. And it's been amazing and life-changing for me. And it helps also for people with complex PTSD. So I wanted to share all of that just to get an idea of the journey. It's been rough. It's been tiring. And I know I'm not the only one. Many of you at the same time, I know you have your own journey. I know you have your own things that you deal with and you experience it. But it kind of takes us to now and what I want to share with you, which regardless of all these different labels that I've received, I said PMDD, is it complex PTSD, is it ADHD? Like, what is it? Is it just, what do you call it? Paranoid, you're paranoid, or is it OCD thoughts? Like, what is it? I chose for me to have professional help, to have support. So I always have that because that's important for me. But outside of that, I don't just cling to the label. So I'm not saying it in a bad way, but at some point I let go of that and I'm like, what do I need now in this moment when I'm dysregulated? And that's where I have found all of these practices, most of them based in somatic healing or somatic different practices of processing in the body. Because for many years, I was very, very intellectual with knowing, researching, but my body's the one that was carrying all of this. And I still, when I'm triggered, I still feel it as if it was the first time that I felt it. And it's very strong. And for some of us, it may not necessarily go away. We're not trying to heal anything to push it away. We're trying to make a life with it that's good and that's loving. And that is, that allows us to enjoy life. But first thing that surprisingly, even to me, it transformed my life because I was never consistent with it. That's why I had not received the full benefits of it. It's breath work. Yes, nothing new, nothing new, but I've known about breath work forever. I've invited people to teach at my workshops. I've known about it for so long. I've even studied classes around breath work, but I had never committed to be consistent with having a daily breath work practice. And I did not know how much my body needed my own breath to feel safe in this world and with my story. My body, when you've experienced any kind of trauma or you are going through something difficult, for most people, I'm not going to say everybody, but for most people, our body goes into stress and we tighten up and we hold our breath. I feel like I've held my breath for the majority of my life. And I was breathing so shallow that I probably didn't even know what it was to thrive with having oxygen. I mean, that's a little dramatic, but what I mean is I don't know. I don't know what happened when I started to do consistent breath work. And my body learned that I can relax, that I am safe, that I can take deep breaths. And I fell in love with it. I will tell you that for me to have a daily practice, it has to be easy. So I don't go to a class. I don't have an extensive thing. I either do a little practice that I do on my own, or I found this amazing channel on YouTube. His name is Sandy, Breathing with Sandy, like Sandy, Sandy, Breathing with Sandy. I think that's what it's called. Let me check so I can give you the right info. Let's see. Yes. So it's called Breathe with Sandy. And it's this guy. He makes amazing quality videos, which that's extra, but I love it. And he guides you in like 10-minute, 15-minute breathwork sessions. And it became so easy. No matter where I am, I can do a little bit of breathwork every day. And it has transformed the way in how I feel in my body. That has been life-changing for me, because the more that I teach my body that I'm safe just existing, the easier it is for me to deal with a lot of things in life. Now, the other thing, it's going to sound like so boring, like boring. But after especially just coming out from a depression season, like I struggled a lot the last few years, like a lot. And just spending a lot of time in bed. Movement. I know it sounds boring. It sounds boring, like really, not just movement, consistent movement. Not just movement, but movement that is not abusive to my body. Like I'm not doing CrossFit right now. Nothing against it, but I'm talking about things that have helped me regulate my nervous system. So in hopes that it inspires you, if in any way you think any of this can help you. But it ties together with the breath. The moment you start feeling safe in your own body, you start wanting to move and explore and feel being in your body. When we're going through an episode of whatever it is, complex PTSD, VPD, we're overwhelmed by ADHD paralysis. We are so disassociated. Like being disassociated has been, I think, my whole childhood and the majority of my life, at least my teens, my early adulthood, like I don't know where. And being in my breath and being in my body and gently moving, nothing that seems boring. Boring, I don't know, but nothing that seems intense. That's what I was trying to say. Has been so rewarding, to the point, like when you move your body for your mental health or your wellness, it's a game changer. It's a game changer. The other benefits that come from it, like if your body changes or you lose weight, that's amazing. But when you're no longer trapped in the sometimes hell that it is to deal with mental health issues, it's amazing. Once again, I'm not saying this is going to get you out of an episode. For that, you need to work with a professional and see what you need, because every case is different. What I'm saying is to maintain when you're doing okay in the long term. For me, it has been moving my body. So that's the second thing. Because I started to move my body from this place of I want to explore, I want to see how it feels to be here. I'm not afraid to move. I'm not seeing it as exercise. Like, no, I don't exercise. I tell people I do not exercise. I move and it looks different every day and I enjoy it. But because that happened, what I ended up discovering is that I started jogging. I've never, ever, ever in my life thought that I would jog. Like, this is like out of character for me. Like, people in my life are like, are you okay? Where is she? Like, who took her? Because me jogging, no. But it happened because I was enjoying so much the movement that the next thing that I knew, I was going a little faster. And then before I knew it, I was like, okay, this feels good. And it started with 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And then it led to other goals. Like recently I did a few 5Ks and I have a big goal in 2025 to do one of the Disney marathons. And it's so interesting. You know, we hear it a lot when we're dealing with mental health issues and we're in our little cave. It feels like nothing can make it better. And I'm not going to say in those moments jogging and in those moments other things were helping me, to be honest. But it was about doing one thing. You know, like, you know, if you've heard that story, sometimes it's just putting one dish in the dishwasher and you already did amazing for the day. Like, that's it. Like, sometimes it's just that. But when you start doing one thing, it leads to another, it leads to another, it leads to another. And eventually that's how change happens. For me, it came through breath work and moving my body. And for the third thing that I wanted to share with you, which was very, very impactful for me, but it's also kind of like, it's the positive, listening to audios that give me positive reassurance of how I want to feel. For some of us, not the case for everybody, but that do deal with trauma or complex PTSD, our mind is not always our friend. And for people that don't deal with this, I can see how they're like, why would you want to listen to somebody like repeating things that you already know? Or like, that's lame, that's boring. But when sometimes your mind can be a scary place or a very vulnerable place, some of us need a lot of reassurance in dialogues that are aligned with our values. So I don't listen to random audios that I don't know what they say. I'm very, very respectful when I work with clients and they ask me to create audios for them, or we're doing a session and what we talk about beforehand, what I'm going to mention. Like, I really value the space that is your head and what's happening here, and it deserves that respect. So I started creating audios for myself. I encourage people to do that. As you know, I'm putting an audio here every month that maybe one person is going to listen to. I don't care. I'm not looking for it to go viral or be. I'm hoping that if anything, I put an audio out there and one person, it helps them through one of their episodes. Like, if that happens, that already like means so much to me. And I can get emotional because if you know what it is to go through a dark episode, you know how difficult it is to get out of it. So if those audios are ever helpful to people that are actually struggling, that would be my goal for those. But that has helped me. I had to record a lot of audios, just grab my phone, of me speaking to myself, the things of how I want to feel and the things I want to begin to do. So for example, it's even boring things. I'm sorry, it's so boring, but it is. But boring things like, I feel safe when I breathe. like it's not fun. Sorry, but it's true. My life is so much better. I'm making this podcast because I started to feel safe when I would breathe, because I started to do breath work, and having audios that reminded me of that allowed me to stick to my goals, allowed me to take the scary step to quit drinking, allowed me to be able to reach for the support that I wanted and to be able to reach out to people again, because I disappeared for a while there. Like, it seems dumb, or not even dumb. I don't want to call it dumb, but like too simple to work. But for some of us, I keep saying that because I know it's not for everybody. Breathing, finding purpose to exist and even move, and listening to things that makes us feel safe and positive and reminds us that of who we are, of what we want to do, of what we want to accomplish, that we can let go of the past, can be so important. So I wanted to share and do this little episode for those of you that you may feel, I struggle with regulating my nervous system. I don't know how to do that, or I have a hard time doing it. For you to know that sometimes the simple actions that have worked for you in the past, but you stopped doing, or things you tried once in a class and never really gave it the light of day, it may be time to bring them back. It may not be the 3 things that it's for me, but if they are, I encourage you to do them. Find ways of moving. I was even talking to somebody, because movement has been so crucial for me recently. I knew the winter was coming. I knew during the summer, I felt that movement was feeding me life, that every little break I had between work, I would open the door and walk. Like, I felt like Forrest Gump. Like, I was just walking nowhere. I was like, I'm going where? I don't know. Because I needed to move. But because I knew winter was coming, that reminded me of what is it? Game of Thrones. Because I knew winter was coming, I decided to invest and buy a treadmill. A used treadmill from the marketplace on Facebook, because that's another goal of mine, which is to not spend money and be over consuming anymore. But I got a treadmill and I said, when I feel like I want to move, regardless of the weather, I click a button and I move. And it's simple. It doesn't have to be hard. And if I don't want to move, I'm not going to move, because I also realize I don't want to be abusive and hard on myself anymore. So I hope this inspires you. Find what is calling you or what your body needs if you're struggling with self-regulation or trauma. Sometimes taking care of the body first. I had to made the decision to let go of alcohol, made the decision to really limit caffeine. I love caffeine and I love having an old fashioned, for example, not at the price of the way it was affecting my health. And I cannot say if I'm never ever in my life going to drink, or if I'm forever going to quit coffee. But what I know is right now, listening to my body and giving it what it needs, it's the most important thing. I invite you to find what that is for you, put it into practice, and let it get boring. The little boring actions are what takes us in the long term to where we want to be. It may be just another walk. It may be just another audio of listening to positive things. It could be I love tapping too. So if, tapping is so helpful. So if you ever see me in public and I'm tapping, because I don't care, like at this point when I'm feeling overwhelmed or dysregulated, I start regulating myself wherever I am. So if you ever see me tapping, that's what I'm doing. But sometimes it's like, okay, another tapping session, but it works. And the nervous system is reacting differently to different situations all the time. So we may need to do it all the time, and it's okay. But I wanted to share this with you. I hope it's helpful. I would love to hear what are your tools that have been helping you regulate. I know some people say somatic dancing and movement as well, art and being creative, of course, having people in our lives that are supportive, so many things. But I would love to hear what yours are. Thank you for listening to this audio. And remember, if you find that you could benefit from trying one of the Gene Keys courses, there is a free Gene Keys course. I know it sounds very random that I'm saying this, but the reason why I keep saying this is because at some point I'm going to be recording more videos around the Gene Keys. And right now they have a really cool free course, completely for free, where you get to go on a 3-day journey of exploring the different spheres in the Gene Keys and where you are. And it's guided by Richard Rudd, which is the guy that kind of transferred all this information to us. So it's pretty cool. You can go to youaretheguide.com/get started. With that said, I hope all of you have a wonderful, wonderful day, and thank you for your time.